on crimes against humanity. This is a phrase which is bandied about all the time now. If in the past you were fighting a battle, as in, say, in Iraq or in all the Middle Eastern invasions, Afghanistan, or in Vietnam, or certainly in the Second World War, you just fought the battle. People didn't say, "Oh, you've accidentally bombed a hospital or a school or a civilian block. This is a crime against humanity. We will take you to the International Criminal Court," and so on. This hasn't been something which is constantly invoked, because there are so many crimes against humanity in that sense. But now, particularly in the Ukrainian war, one of the things that has struck me is the way in which, particularly the Ukrainians, obviously, are constantly saying, whenever there's anything that they think could go under that label, the shooting of some civilians or targeting of some civilian amenity, then they immediately say the international community should investigate this as a crime against humanity. Maybe they should, but in comparison to the scale of previous crimes against humanity, of course, it's not enormously significant. The concept itself, I'm reading a wonderful book by Philippe Sands called East-West Street, and it's centrally about the invention of that crime and also the crime of genocide. And the crime of against humanity was a phrase, an idea invented by originally a Polish, Ukrainian, wherever Lviv happened to be, a gentleman called Lauterpecht, who then came to Cambridge and for many years was Professor of International Relations at Cambridge. And around the time of the Nuremberg trials in which he was involved, he persuaded the Americans and others to consider this new offence. The essence of it was that a crime against humanity meant that even though the crime was committed within a single government against its own people, for example, if the government of Myanmar cracked down and killed civilians within Myanmar or Burma, then it's not just a crime, internal offence against the laws of Myanmar, it's a crime against humanity. So what it did was to take law out of the regional, the national, and up to world levels. Because the very concept of humanity meant, and what it appealed to, was something like the Declaration of the Rights of Man and the American Constitution, that certain rights, not to be killed, bombed, tortured, and so on, are not restricted to one country. They are part of who we are as human beings. They are fundamental human rights. So this idea is a breathtaking leap of taking a limited phenomenon and broadcasting it around the world. It appealed to values which we held. What would be a crime against humanity in one society would not necessarily be one in another. And this is obviously one of the criticisms you can make of it. It's very Western-centric. It's our values. And if you, for example, as a Chinese said, it's a crime against humanity to allow people to have guns in America, semi-automatic rifles to kill people, that's a crime against humanity. If they fire them or even if they have them, then Americans would say this is absolutely ridiculous. Or if you said it's a crime against humanity to deprive poorer countries of COVID vaccines so that you can have an oversupply in your own country. People say, oh, that's not a crime against, and so on. You can go on endlessly saying that what each country considers to be a crime against humanity. But what was clever and significant was that while the West was very dominant, and particularly America, this was enshrined as a world principle. It's not one which actually in practice has much effect. The Nuremberg trials was effective, but since, for instance, America is not a party to the International Criminal Court, doesn't accept its findings, if a case is taken there against an American, it means very little. So it's fairly fluffy. On the other hand, for many people, it seems a good start. You really do need some general international standard of behaviour to which everyone, including governments, is held to account. But in order to make it more effective, we have to examine the concept and decide what those crimes are, and not make them too Eurocentric and Western. From my point of view, in allowing and condoning mass starvation, as is happening in parts of Africa now, condoning vast expenditure on weaponry, huge sums in fighting and building up to fighting, allowing forests and oceans to be destroyed, those also surely are crimes against humanity. So we have to add to the list somewhat and modify it and take it away from a rather mid-20th century concern with offences that were particularly concerned with the Holocaust and the treatment of the Jews by Hitler and his gang. So it's a good thing to think with and talk about, but it's not settled how to deal with it or what it is.